going to tell you, because there's going to come a day in your life where you're going to need God's man. Did you hear me? He wears the title of the man of God, but there's going to be a day when he's going to become God's man for you. And you're going to need that old-time preacher. You're going to need God's man in your life. You know why? Because God set him up there. He's your balance. Is anybody with me this morning? He's a balance in your life. Use your balance. You know what bothers me? I was preaching in a meeting, and that when I got through that night, a guy stood up weeping and crying, and he said, Preacher Aslan, he said, you preached about me tonight. I did exactly that. And I was preaching that the man of God is a balance. I've had people, I had it happen to me when I was pastoring. I've had it happen to a lot of my preacher friends. Somebody in their church come up and say, Preacher, I want to tell the church something. Okay, we'll let you. Then suddenly they get up and they say, Church, I just want to tell you, today is our last Sunday. My wife and I, we are leaving here, and we're not going to come back. And I'm giving up all my positions today. And I've been praying about it for a year now. When did you talk to your preacher about it? Hello. He's your balance. Now, you've just thrown it on him. You haven't said a thing to him about it. He's your shepherd. He's your watchman over the flock. He's the one that cares for you. I'm just telling you, you should understand he's ruler over you as a shepherd. According to Hebrews 13, thank you. And you want to bypass that. You need God's man in your life. I've asked the preachers, out of all the people that have stood up and said they're leaving your church and took their family out, how many of them has come to you prior weeks and months and said, Preacher, I want you to pray with me about this. I want you to pray with me about, we honestly think God's moving us somewhere. And I want you to pray with me about that. I've asked preachers across the land. I've never asked him, but I've asked preachers across this land. How many folk in your life where you pastored all these years that ended up leaving the church, walking off and saying, I prayed about it and God's leading me out of here? How many of them really talked to you? Brother, how many's come to you? None. Wow. I'm going to try to stop here. I never get through preaching. I just get tired and sit down. This old story just keeps growing. Brother Bobby, it's bigger than I am. Oh, yeah. Listen to me. God's give you a balance in your pastor. God give you a balance with your wife or your husband. And with my wife just passing away, I just lost a balance in my life. And I'm trying to find a replacement for it. She was that balance, and I went to her, and she was that balance, and she's the one that kept me balanced. Now that's gone. Now I'm having to draw my own balance. I'm having to draw my own walls right now. I'm trying to be very careful because that balance is not there. Do you know who I've relied on now more than ever? It's been my pastor. Do you know who I came by and visited on the way up here and eat supper with them and eat breakfast with them the next morning because I needed to talk to them about something? Was my preacher. He's my balance. He's always been my balance, and where my wife has been my balance, she's gone now. But I just understand, Brother Jeff, that I must have that balance in my life, because if I don't, then I'm in trouble. Yeah. Is anybody with me? Amen. Something about God's man. You need to appreciate him. You need to appreciate Him. If you're ever going to make a major decision in your life, you need to sit down and get Him to pray with you. Let Him pray about those decisions you're about to make. I've never purchased anything major in my life that I didn't. My wife and I prayed about it. We went to our pastor and we got him to pray with us. And I went to some other balances that I've had and said, I'm about to make a major decision here. I want you to pray with me about this, and then I want to hear what you've got to say about it. And did you know, brother, there has been many times I've changed my mind because of the balance. It was made up that I'm going to do this until I got to talking to my balance. Getting folks to pray about it. Going to my preacher that God's given me. But Lot waved goodbye to Abram. Waved goodbye to him. And guess where he ended up at? Yes, sir. Can I tell you here this morning that Lot would have never got out of Sodom and Gomorrah if it hadn't have been for Abram. That would have became Abraham. If it had not been for Abraham, Lot would have never been delivered out of Sodom and Gomorrah. He would have become ashes with the rest of it. Are you with me? Please listen. Some of these young people growing up, they don't think they need these three things anymore. And even some of our adults have done waved goodbye to them. You need to reevaluate, and you need to put back in place that altar in your life. You need to put back in place Bethel and let it become El Bethel. And you need to understand that you need the man of God, that shepherd, that bishop, that watchman over your soul. If you're going to wave goodbye to some things, don't wave goodbye to them, because you're going to need them to stand their feet. Man, would you come to the piano, organ? However you do it, fine with me. I just wonder this morning, has God spoke to your heart? How many of you in here right now with your heads bowed just for a moment, and Brother Jeff is coming? How many right now with your heads bowed right here this morning? How many of you would raise your hand and say, Preacher, God spoke to my heart this morning through preaching? Would you just raise it up for a moment? God spoke to my heart.